Welcome back, everyone. Integrating real perspective film review corner here. So, you remember when I brought up my love for M. Night Shyamalan in my review for After Earth? And I mentioned that Lady in the Water is my favorite work of his. Well, here I am reviewing it for all you guys and gals, and it is going to be an enchanting show. So step right in and enjoy my review for Lady in the Water. Stage light on, curtain drawn, and that's basically how it feels watching this film. It really feels like you're stepping into a world where Neptune's kingdom meets the real world. And the stage is this apartment complex in Philadelphia called the Cove, which is run by a stuttering superintendent named Mr. Cleveland Heap, played by the ever charismatic Paul Giamatti. An actor who can do a one-man show and carry the weight of any movie he's in, it seems. If you've ever seen him in The Illusionist or in Love and Mercy, you know what I'm talking about. Love the guy a lot. So, the setup for this movie is that there is some mysterious activity going on in the apartment complex and this speculation of a trespasser swimming in the pool located at the center of the complex. And that's where we're introduced to the character of Story, played by the lovely Bryce Dallas Howard, the daughter, believe it or not, of di- director Ron Howard. Getting into Story's character and how Cleveland discovers her will require getting into the mythology backdrop for this movie. Yeah. So many centuries ago, there was this underwater kingdom known as the Blue World. Story belongs to a species of nymphs called narfs, and they had a sacred relationship with humans. Any wish that humans wanted to come true, the narfs would grant it. So right away, I could tell when first viewing this movie that it would be a departure from Knight's more horror-filled stories. Knight has had a reputation for creating movies that were scary, except that the horror would arrive very slowly after establishing atmosphere and inducing a hypnotic trance in terms of the pacing. And you know, I love his films for that reason too. I mean, basically everything from, you know, 1999 through 2006 was just a straight up series of gems from Night. Just one masterpiece after another. And Lady in the Water, by contrast, is a children's story, which is only fitting since Knight had his first child at the time of this movie. And broadly speaking, this movie is really about storytelling as a tool for finding purpose in our lives. Paul's character Cleveland is really only one of a whole cast of characters. You have Bob Balaban playing an arts critic named Mr. Farber. Yeah, Bob Balaban, who goes all the way back to the 70s. The guy with the scraggly hair and the beard and the glasses. He was in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and he was in Altered States. I seriously got this guy mixed up with Arliss Howard somehow because the two look very much alike. But anyways, there's his character. You have Jeffrey Wright playing a father who finds symbols and crossword puzzles and has fun with his son doing these puzzles together. Even his own son is an interpreter as well, who can find messages from looking at boxes of breakfast cereals. There's Bill Irwin, who plays an old retired army vet, and who is always sitting in front of his television watching like old war documentaries and experiencing sorrow over how much dread, how much unhappiness there is in the world. There's an old lady then who loves butterflies and finds magic every time one flies around her. And then there's, these two Asian women, a mother and daughter. Um, the daughter in particular is kind of one of these really skimpy type of girls who is also studying psychology, but also likes to go out and party and dance a lot. But she also has a lot of knowledge about the mythology about regarding nerves, which was passed down from her mother. And then, surprise, surprise, and oh wow, what is this ever a big whopper for you? There's the director himself, who's given his first ever and so far his only starring role as an author by the name of Vic Ran, who is writing a book called The Cookbook. And it's a study on all of culture and societies and the problems they face. Knight has basically been like the Alfred Hitchcock or the Michael Bay of his films. He would show up in a cameo that would last anywhere from like, well, usually like a few minutes. I was going to say a few seconds, but he usually has a pretty significant cameo in every movie that he's in. Unbreakable, he was the guy standing at the gate while Bruce Willis, feels him up and down to make sure he's not carrying any firearms. In Signs, he was the guy who actually killed Mel Gibson's wife by accident. And then there was the sheriff that he played in The Village. But here he is actually playing an author. And this happens to be the person that story is looking for. Yes, M. Night Shyamalan gets a generous amount of time on screen for this one. His role was very telling here, and he really plays it with such sincerity. I could tell that this film was a meta fantasy fiction talking about his life as a director and writer. That's why this film was my favorite of his for the longest time, because it's a very personal film for him. Personal because he's always been an eternal child at heart who just wants to be taken seriously. And, for all the flack that this guy gets post The Sixth Sense, or for a minority of fans, the drop off point for him was Signs, Knight really gets more love. I mean, he gets more love from me than most of the posers out there claiming to be his fans. Knight was always someone who had something profound to say about his life, the universe, and everything. Ha ha ha. Yeah, I just made a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. And that's why he's one of the most cherished directors in my film collection. And, seeing himself written into his own film was a clever move. He was probably taking cues from Nicolas Cage when he did that film adaptation. That's that's probably what it was. In fact, speaking of taking inspiration, Doug Jones has a cameo as one of the Tartaric, these monkey-like creatures that hide in the trees, um, hidden away from all the residents of the apartment complex. And they're the ones who guard the blue world. They're the ones who keep the Narfs safe from the Scrunts, which I'll get into in just a little bit. Now, I believe that Knight was tipping his hat to Guillermo del Toro here, seeing as how Pan's Labyrinth came out the same year. Also a must-see classic, by the way, that you should not skip out on. That film was actually my number one favorite movie of all time for the longest time. If you if you love Pan's Labyrinth, there's no reason for you to not love Lady in the Water either. And I happen to be a Guillermo del Toro fan myself, another director that I'm just in awe of. So there is an ensemble of characters who are participant in this great myth to help Story get back home to the blue world after she's stranded in the world of humans. The pool is essentially a portal for her. And there is a predatory wolf known as the Scrunt who camouflages itself in the grass, and it's got these red eyes that are very glowing and piercing. Story also has the gift of prophecy, and when she finds Vic, she tells him that his book will influence this young boy, this fan of his, who is going to be inspired by the symbols in his book and will rise up and become president one day. Story herself even communicates through archetypes and says that there is a guardian, a symbolist, and the guild. Now, here is where the interpretation gets a bit messy here, because at first Cleveland is thought to be the guardian, except that in the scene where he's having to confront the Scrunt and drive it away, he can't. Like he stares it straight in the eyes, which according to story is what the guardian does. That's, what causes the Scrunt to back off, but instead he moves towards Cleveland. And eventually Cleveland has to run for his life and back into the safety of his own apartment. So yeah, that didn't go really well for sure. But this is where the Shyamalan stream of consciousness twerp plays in here. At the last second, it turns out that this muscle guy, Reggie, is the guardian. Now, Reggie is this guy who's like always sitting outdoors lifting uh, a dead weight, like 20 pounds, and he's only like strengthening this one side of his body. I now um personally there's I'm still trying to figure out exactly how he became revealed as the Guardian, particularly because he's not revealed to be the Guardian in the final minutes of the movie. However, I know what you're thinking, and I thought about this too. The temptation is to think that this was just a random left turn detour to throw your expectations off for the sake of suspense. I mean, all we know about this Reggie is that this is like this thing he's doing with strengthening the one side of his body is supposed to be a scientific experiment, probably to like compare body image and see, you know, I guess like to pick up chicks and see which girls love them more, Jean-Claude Van Damme side of himself, and which girls like the plainer side of himself, or if they're repelled by the plainer side of himself and preferred his muscle man V shred model side. But see, this is the cleverness of Shyamalan, the genius of his vision, especially for this movie. You actually have to listen to the characters interact, observe their changing behavior and their motives. And the challenge is that the characters are often aloof, as if in a trance. That's how the fantasy element plays into this film. You're literally inside a lucid dream experience captured on moving pictures. Premonitions, don't always go as planned, though. Sometimes misinterpretation happens, which can often be fatal to some individuals. The film critic, for example, was assumed. he was the symbolist at first, but he ends up dying by the Skrunt's vicious attack. And his life had been dedicated to decoding formulas for story structure and character arc. And so he thinks he has it all figured out when he confronts the Skrunt in the basement of the building. And he believes that this is the moment in which he is going to narrowly escape, um, and just make it out alive. But just as he's turning around, the Skrunt then jumps at him and kills him. Never even makes it to the door. But nevertheless, in the end, it all works out spectacularly. The ending is so sweet that it gets me teary when it ends with the giant eagle coming by and swooping up Story after Cleveland tells her, "Thank you for protecting me." Hermeneutics play an omnipresent role in this film. It shows what can happen when something is misinterpreted or when someone speculates something and then talks out of turn. As with After Earth, I would have loved to have seen the blue world where Story comes from. Bryce really does a stunning job of appearing so eternally childlike and innocent. The transformation where her hair turns from ginger to blonde was neat to watch. I wonder what her daddy, Ron, was thinking of. I mean, hey, both Ron and Bryce are redheads after all. What was also striking, though, is the fact that her transformation from Knight's previous film, The Village, where she played a blind woman, Story was definitely a one up for her to expand on her acting experience and build her resume. Yeah. She really does carry on the same characteristics, though. She's very empathic, sees through the facades that people wear, like how she picked up on Cleveland's sadness. Cleveland had been hiding basically, um, hiding behind this mask of being a superintendent manager of this particular Philadelphia residence. And see, now I'm starting to get a bit of a stutter now just thinking about Cleveland. And the reason why was because of the fact that he had been hiding due to the grief over his death of his wife and daughter, which actually becomes something that helps him out later on, especially since their rapport starts to bring out the healer abilities in each other. So Story helps to heal Cleveland of his stutter. Basically, whenever he's around her, he just talks normally. He talks straight. He can articulate himself better. And in in the end, he repays the favor, where fate had painted him into this myth when he has to heal her from those life-threatening scratches from the Skrunt during a point where she's close to death. And this is where he starts confessing to the universe. He's sorry that he was never there for his wife and his daughter, sorry that their lives were taken away from him so soon. And and it's through his loss that his healer abilities come through. I mean, it just makes you realize all those Reiki practitioners or acupuncturists or a lot of holistic healers out there are people who have gone through a lot of trauma in their lives themselves. Boy, this is such a soft movie to watch. Definitely a soft, sweet movie to watch over and over again. It's like this hug, it, that whenever every time I rewatch this film, 18 years after it first came out, I just feel so loved. Like I know that there is this beautiful nymph slash maenad that is watching over me through my own creative processes myself, being a writer and being a musician, for example, and a dancer. And I really feel that for all artists out there that are coming up against some writer's block, all you people out there need to watch this movie. Yeah, it's a movie that will help you feel like a child again, and instill that sense of wonder about life here and beyond, to be able to ponder other worlds and other dimensions and know that there are other ancestral races watching us and inspiring in us to heal each other of our separateness. And hopefully one day I will meet a woman as beautiful and as enchanting and as shining in all of her luminous divinity as Bryce Dallas Howard. Gosh, she's a beautiful woman. So, so yeah, and that ends my review today for Lady in the Water. Hope you enjoy this review. And as always, shout out to Mega Media Exchange in Brookfield. Check them out. They have DVDs that sell for as less as 74 cents there. Blu-rays, CDs, video games too. Of course, without this business, my channel would not exist. Also gonna put my link below for the Easta Tantra school in Arizona that I'm, planning to raise money for so that I can go and visit that place. And yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the flip side of the reel. Ciao.